Because CNCing is a physical process, we need to have a way to mount the material to the machine so it doesn't move around as it gets cut. Workholding is the idea of mounting the material to the wasteboard. We'll be talking about a couple different common ways that users of the long mill use to keep their material from moving. Our first one, and probably the most simplest and easy to use, is screwing it directly to the machine itself. These are probably the most common ones that we use with the long mill because, well, at least I use with the long mill because they're the easiest and the most simple. But obviously there's tons of different types of work holding, and we have a website resources that covers different types of work holding, so make sure to check that out. But we're also doing this online course, which this content will be part of that, so yeah, stay tuned. So the first work holding technique we're going to cover is using screws. So as you can see on the wasteboard, it's basically like Swiss cheese, because basically what we do is just take the material and screw it directly down to the material. Generally, I find that materials that are thinner, like plywood, work well with the screws. I don't even bother drilling the pilot holes first. I just screw it straight down. And the other thing is that sometimes the material is a little warped, so you might have it cup this way or this way. By putting screws in all four corners, it means that you can hold down the material flat as you cut it. Just as a piece of advice, you can see here that the material is a little bowed, and you can flop it around this way. And then if you flip it the other way, it'll need to be pressed down. So if you think about how you're going to put the screws into the material, you probably want to flip it because we're going to screw on the corners. You want to push down on the corners so that the material stays flat. The reason I want the material to be flat to the wasteboard is because when you're cutting into the material, if you have a high spot, then the bit might scratch the surface if you're very close to it. Obviously, you can adjust the Z height to not have it do that. It's just better practice to make the material as flat as possible. Another kind of random tip that I use is there's these edges that were cut straight, so I can find like a reference edge to line the material up, because most of the projects that I'm gonna cut are probably going to be in line parallel with some sort of line, and also it follows the pattern of the grain. With the nature of the Sienci machine, we're going to set the origin point to wherever the material ends up being, so I don't need to worry about where it is on the machine. So I just have some random screws in here, and I got a impact drill thing, and I just go in and so there you go. And now it's pretty flat. It's mounted to the machine, and that's pretty much all there is to it. One tip that I would use for doing it this way is that sometimes if you're cutting parts out of the material and you don't want them to shift around, sometimes I'll do the holes of the part first, if there are holes, and then I'll screw it into the holes. Like I'll drill the holes before you cut out the outline, and then I'll put in the screws into the holes first so that it holds the middle part of the material in first. On the flip side, if you use a corncob bit or like a down cut bit, usually it'll keep some sawdust in the cut so they don't move around that much. It really depends on the context of the thing that you're trying to do, but now it's flat, it's pretty sturdy, you can't move it around, so that's pretty much that.